Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to do kind of like a review of my experience at the Cedars GI Clinic. So I may have talked about this in one of my other videos. I was referred by my GI doctor. I've had a couple of GI doctors, had a very bad experience with the first one, went to another one. I actually had a nurse practitioner. She was really great, did a bunch of tests, and everything was kind of inconclusive. And so she said, I think it would be great for you to go to the GI clinic at Cedars. Now, the GI clinic at Cedars is kind of world renowned. I do remember hearing about it a few years ago. And I knew that there was a doctor or a researcher or something. His name is Dr. Pimental. And he is sort of like this world renowned SIBO expert. And he's researched it, but also he's, I guess he's been kind of one of the like leaders in diagnosis and treatment for SIBO. So I wasn't going to see him. I don't think he sees patients. He probably just oversees the program, or I don't know, something. But I was like, you know what, if there's a place to go, it's going to be the Cedars GI Clinic. So I was expecting a lot of big things, I guess. And, the drive is a bit stressful. And, but I was like, maybe it'll be worth it. So I saw a doctor named Dr. Yin Chan. He looked pretty young. I would say we've got to be around the same age. He's probably younger than me at this point. For whatever reason, I always think they're my age. Most doctors are probably younger than me at this point. I kind of got there, barely on time. This was one of my first times. I think this was my first time going to Cedars. Cedars is a big medical network hospital, one of the best in California, probably one of the best in the country. As a matter of fact, the Cedars GI Clinic is the best GI clinic in California and number 2 in the nation. So that should tell you everything. I was expecting quite a bit. So I get there just barely on time, and the experience was a little bit weird. Like the nurse, I think, said something like, "You're late" or something. I don't know. It was bizarre. I was kind of late, but I was like, why would a nurse just say that? Like, usually nurses are nicer than the doctors, but whatever. And the doctor was running late anyway. So part of me was like, why make that comment when the doctor is running very late? Because I did have to wait quite a bit for him. So they took me in, into the the room. A different nurse I think came in, because there was one nurse, and then I think there was another nurse. I can't even remember. And since it was taking forever, I think that second nurse was the one that told me, he's running late, so a resident is going to come in and take your medical history. And I think he was running very late because the resident took like all of my medical history. It was crazy. And I had a female resident. She was also very young. But she was actually really good. I mean, she really took a comprehensive history. Like I said, I have a feeling it was because the doctor was running late. So they probably told her like, hey, you gotta kill some time here. And she figured, I'll get her entire history from, I don't know, birth or whatever. And just to keep us occupied. But she did take a very comprehensive history, and it's really interesting because you will be seeing other videos on my channel where I talk about endometriosis and all of that. At this point, my oncologist had actually ordered an ultrasound, and I had already done the ultrasound, but it was based on some tumor markers that she was seeing slowly go up. They were not out of range yet, but she was very concerned. I have an excellent oncologist, and she's on top of everything. And so when she sees something that's just kind of, numbers that are kind of moving around, she starts ordering tests. So I had already done the ultrasound, but I had not done my follow-up with her, so I didn't know the results. but the results were already in the portal. I just didn't know, and I didn't expect anything because I never expect anything. None of my tests ever come back positive. So I'm going through my medical history with the resident, and she's asking me all these questions. She's asking me, GI issues and just general, everything, because I did talk to her about previously having painful periods, medications that I had been on, like IVIG, and how that affected my GI symptoms and like other symptoms. And she must have had the time because she was asking me everything. And at a certain point, while she's collecting all this information, she looks at me and she goes, "Have you ever been checked for endometriosis? Because a lot of these symptoms can also be found in endo patients." And I just kind of looked at her like, "No, I've never been checked for that," and didn't really think much of it at all. She did suggest other testing. She suggested a lot of very interesting things. Testing the mobility of your sphincter to see if you're actually emptying. That would have been a great test. I would have loved to have done that test. Probably isn't pleasant, but I would have been all for it. And so she's, I could see that the wheels are turning with this girl. Like she really, she's writing everything down, and she's really, she's really going at it. And it was a while. I was waiting for that doctor for well over a half hour, probably more than that. So finally this guy comes in. And I'm just looking at him like, what on earth? But anyways, he comes in. I guess he had read her notes because she did take the notes and then she left. And then I still waited probably like another half hour between that time. So he probably had gone through all the notes. And he just came in and he was just like, what do you want? What do you want out of this? Or what do you want to focus on? Like he was just like, I can't tell you how much I hate when doctors do this, because you are the doctor, not me. You don't tell me what we're going to focus on. I don't tell you. You tell me what we're going to focus on. You can ignore all the other stuff, all the other notes that she took. Just focus on the GI related stuff, and then let's go from there. And he comes in and he's already kind of like, I don't want to say he's exasperated. He's just kind of like a lot. He's like, I guess he has a lot on his mind. And he starts asking like, there's like a lot here. What do you want to focus on? And I said, well, I'm here for GI issues. Like, what do you think? I never talk like that to my doctors. I just sound like that in my head. So, I tell him what's been going on. Every time I take a round of antibiotics, I bloat up really badly. I have all these food sensitivities, GI issues, histamine intolerance, and so on and so forth. And so, I wasn't expecting much. Once I kind of saw him, I was like, this guy is really not, I don't think he's going to take this very seriously. I don't think he really cares, to be honest. And he even flat out told me, he's like, I don't think these symptoms are related to endo anyways. Like, because I told him, I said, she mentioned this. He's like, I don't think this would be related to endo or anything like, actually, no, I think he told me that later, after I found out I actually do have endometriosis. So he did a baseline breath test. If you know anything about SIBO, there is a breath test that doctors do where you drink a liquid and then you blow air into these bags. And then the air is analyzed, I think, to detect methane or to detect certain gas. And that will tell you whether you have SIBO or not, and I guess the severity of it or whatever. But he said, we can just do a baseline. We can just have you breathe your regular breath that does not have any kind of, you're not going to drink anything. We're just going to do a baseline breath test. He said, typically people that do have pretty bad SIBO will blow some of that gas and it will come up. It will be detected. He said, so this would just be a good way to see, if you do have it. He said, most people with SIBO will be detected just on this breath test alone. I've never heard of that, but I said that's fine. I wasn't in the mood to drink anything because I still had to drive myself back home in the middle of heavy traffic. So we did the breath test. It didn't show anything at all. So at least I have that. At least I can say, well, my baseline breath test is not blowing any methane or any other kinds of gases, and so the probability of SIBO is probably lower. And he did tell me, he said, I don't think you have SIBO. And I told him, I don't think I have SIBO either. I have done multiple rounds of antibiotics, not for SIBO, but for other things, sinus infections, vaginal infections, things like that over the last couple of years. And I had told him that. I said, I have this whole history of I've done every class of antibiotic you can imagine. And he said, the only thing that I could prescribe you for SIBO is more of those antibiotics. And if you're having reactions to the antibiotics, it's probably, your symptoms are coming from the rounds of antibiotics. He said, it's not going to help you. It's just going to make things worse. He said, and because you've done antibiotics so many times already, he said, I really don't think that it's SIBO. He said, what it could be, and he kind of even said it like not really totally sure. He said, what it could be is maybe a intestinal fungal infection, which I think is also known as like candida, that kind of thing. And I did have that many, many, many years ago. That was kind of one of my first symptoms before I knew I was really, really sick. And I had done the diet and all of that. Back then I could take, herbs and things like that. And I did improve from that. So, I was like, this is nothing new to me, but that's fine. So he said, I can prescribe you an antifungal. You can try it. He said you could pick those up and try them and see if that helps, especially with the bloating that you have after antibiotics. And, I had mentioned histamine issues, and he ordered, these urine tests for histamine, which I have done already in the past. But he ordered like 3 of them, and I did do them. They didn't show anything. So at the very least, he did order some tests. He didn't even consider any of the other stuff that the resident had mentioned. She seemed just so much more receptive. I've noticed this a lot with female doctors. They're just more receptive to women. And so she had mentioned some interesting tests, but again, he didn't think that any of that was necessary. He's like, I really don't think you have SIBO. Try the antifungals. And then you can just keep in touch with me through the online portal. He said, if you need anything, but he didn't schedule a follow-up. It was just like, he just didn't seem very invested, and was just like, be on your way. So it kind of wasn't worth it. I felt like it wasn't worth it. Most of the tests had already been run by the regular GI doctor, and they were inconclusive as well. And then when I left this appointment, because the resident had mentioned endometriosis, just out of curiosity, I remembered that I had that ultrasound, and I came home and I logged into the portal, and I checked to see, because sometimes I'll post the results there first before, your follow-up with the doctor. And so I checked, and they were there, and I saw something was found called an endometrioma. And I was like, that it doesn't say endometriosis, it says an endometrioma. I was like, it sounds like that, but it's not that. So that's where I started researching, and I found out that it is part of endometriosis. It basically means you do have endometriosis. It counts as endometriosis. And my research, I've been researching it since then. So, I did get back in touch with him. That's, and I told him, I said, look, your resident had mentioned this, and now I have this result. And he did say something like, I don't think your symptoms are related to that either, but we can't give you a referral. I ended up, I was able to get an appointment, just by calling directly to the gynecology department at Cedars, which I have not been very impressed with their gynecology department either. But we'll have to wait for another video for that. In my opinion, I was not impressed by the Cedars GI Clinic, unless maybe, he was probably right. I don't have SIBO, and I've noticed that my SIBO symptoms just they're not consistent, but I also don't really eat enough things to find out how bad they are. To be honest, I just really don't know. And of course, the amount of antibiotics that I've done is just ridiculous. I just finished another course because I have another sinus infection. So I wasn't impressed. I think that unless you are pretty positive, or your doctors are like, this is probably SIBO, you know, and you need to get the testing done, I would go there and get the testing done there at Cedars, because that's what they specialize in. So for me, I wasn't impressed. I did not care for this doctor. The resident was great. I think she's going to make an excellent doctor, but I didn't think that he was anything special. So that's just my, you know, my review, I guess, for those of you, especially if you have to travel out of state to come out here. You know, my heart goes out to people that have to come to the coastal, you know, places to find expert medical care, because sometimes it's just not even worth it. It's not even worth it if you live like right in the same city. So anyways, thank you so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.